I never thought I'd be sitting here, spilling this kind of mess on a public forum, but honestly, it's the only place I feel like I can get this off my chest without losing my mind. My name's Mike, and I was married to Lisa for almost 8 years. We have a pretty typical life: military family, steady jobs, a nice house in the suburbs. At first, everything seemed fine. She was sharp, confident, the kind of woman who knew what she wanted, and honestly, she could be kind of a bitch sometimes, but I liked that about her. She kept me on my toes. But somewhere along the line, I started noticing little things, tiny things that didn't add up. She'd be distracted more often, taking longer to respond to texts, doing this weird thing where she'd hide her phone when I walked into the room. She'd be cold, dismissive about stuff I'd bring up, and I caught her lying a few times about where she was going or who she was with. I brushed it off at first, telling myself I was paranoid, that maybe I was overthinking things. She was busy with her job, her friends, her social life. No big deal, right? But then came the night everything fell apart. It was a Thursday and I was supposed to be working late, but I came home early because I forgot my laptop charger. I figured I'd surprise her, maybe cook dinner, relax with her after her long day. When I pulled up into the driveway, I saw her car was still there, but the lights in the house were dim. That wasn't unusual. She sometimes liked to unwind in the dark, but the feeling I got wasn't right. I decided to go in quietly, hoping to catch her unawares or maybe get a moment to talk. That's when I heard the noise first, what sounded like muffled voices coming from the living room. I froze, my heart pounding, trying to listen. It was faint, but I could definitely tell it wasn't her voice alone. Curious and a little scared, I crept closer, peering through the crack in the door. What I saw made my blood run cold. My wife, Lisa, was on the couch with some guy. Not just any guy, the son of the commanding officer at the base, a kid I'd met a few times, actually. He was a little younger than me, probably early 20s, and they were tangled up in each other, lips pressed together, hands all over each other. I couldn't move. My stomach twisted, and for a second I felt like I was going to throw up. This was beyond betrayal. It was a slap in the face, knowing that she'd been lying to my face for months, maybe longer. I didn't even know how to process it. I just stood there, staring through the door, trying to make sense of the chaos inside my head. I saw her pull away briefly, then run her fingers through her hair, trying to look innocent as she turned to face him. They didn't see me, thank God, but I knew I had to confront her. I had enough of this sneaking around, these lies, this whole life she was pretending to have. I waited until they left the room, then quietly backed out, my mind racing. I didn't want to just burst in there and shout, not yet. I needed to figure out what this meant, whether it was just a hookup or if there was something more. But I knew deep down this wasn't just a one-time thing. This kind of betrayal doesn't happen overnight, and I also knew that my wife was a liar, always had been, always would be. She'd come up with some bullshit story to cover her ass, I was sure of it. But I was also sure that I couldn't stay silent anymore. This was a line crossed, a line I never thought I'd see her cross. I sat in my car for a long time after that, trying to breathe. My mind kept circling the images, the sounds, the way she looked at him like she was craving something she wasn't getting from me. I'd been blind for so long, telling myself that maybe I was just imagining things or that things would get better. But now I felt like I was staring at the truth in the face, and the truth was ugly as hell. I didn't know what to do yet, but I knew I had to make a decision. I just didn't realize how much this would change everything. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus at work. Every time I closed my eyes, that image of Lisa with him burned into my brain. Way she looked, her smirk, her hands running over him like he was some prize she'd finally won. It wasn't just the betrayal of her cheating, it was the way she lied about everything, the way she'd pretend everything was fine when I knew damn well it was. I kept asking myself how I missed all this, how I didn't see the signs, how I could have been so blind. I started digging, not in some obsessive, stalker way, but because I had to know what I was dealing with. I went through my phone, found her texts flirty, suggestive, filled with bullshit excuses about being stressed or needing a break. She was constantly lying, hiding stuff. My stomach turned because I realized how much I'd trusted her, how many years I'd given her, and she threw it all away over some kid from the base. I felt humiliated, angry, and mostly just stupid for not seeing it coming. One night I couldn't hold it in anymore. I decided I had to confront her. I was not going to sit back and pretend like I didn't know what was happening. I waited until she was asleep. She was always the heavy sleeper. And then I went into our bedroom. I found her phone on the nightstand unlocked. I knew I shouldn't, but I needed to see the truth with my own eyes. I scrolled through her messages, and what I saw confirmed everything. Flirty texts, late-night calls, pictures she'd sent and received. There was one from him, a picture of her in bed with her legs spread wide, captioned, "Can't wait to see you again." That's when I lost my shit. The next day, I woke her up early. She looked annoyed, already with that bitchy smirk she always had when she thought she was in control. I handed her the phone and told her to explain. She sat up, looked at me with this fake innocence and said, "Mike, I don't know what you're talking about. You're overreacting. It's nothing. Just a stupid thing, a mistake." Her voice was high, defensive, like she was trying to convince herself as much as me. I told her I'd seen enough, that I knew she was cheating and I wanted the truth, no more lies. Her reaction was infuriating. She rolled her eyes, scoffed, and said, "Oh, so now you're jealous? Seriously, you think I'd cheat on you? You're imagining things. That guy's just a kid. We're just friends. Jesus, Mike, you're so paranoid. Maybe I should find someone who appreciates me." That kind of bullshit. She kept lying, spinning her web, acting like it was all some big misunderstanding. But I wasn't stupid. I saw the way she looked at him, the way she touched her phone as if it was her lifeline. I felt a sting of rage, but underneath that, a deep sadness. I'd been a good husband, worked my ass off, supported her, never gave her a reason to doubt I loved her. And now, it was like she'd been waiting for the perfect moment to dump her secret. I knew I had to do something, but what? Do I call her out publicly, confront her in front of the kids, or just cut her loose quietly? Either way, I saw that this wasn't just about one night or a fling. It was about her character, her integrity, and she had none. That realization hit hard. I told her I was done talking, that I wanted her to leave. I needed space to breathe, to think. She threw a fit, called me controlling, said I was overreacting, that she loved me but just needed a little fun to spice up her dull life. I couldn't believe how she lied so effortlessly, how she could look me in the eye and keep spinning her bullshit. I walked out of the room, feeling like my world was crumbling beneath me. I'd trusted her with everything, and now I saw her true face. It was like a punch to the gut, knowing the woman I married had been cheating on me with a kid from my own command, someone I'd probably met and never suspected. That night, I sat alone, staring at the ceiling, trying to process what I'd just learned. Part of me was furious, part of me was broken. I kept asking myself why I let it get this far, why I didn't see sooner. And I realized I'd been so caught up in the idea of a perfect life, I was blind to all the signs. I told myself I'd never let her get away with this, that I'd get revenge somehow. But I wasn't sure what that looked like yet. All I knew was I couldn't just forgive and forget, not after what I'd seen, what I'd uncovered. I had to figure out my next move, and frankly, I was already planning it. After that confrontation, everything changed. I knew I had to get some distance, clear my head, and think about what I was really going to do. I didn't want to make any impulsive decisions, but the anger and betrayal were eating me alive. I decided to take a few days off work, just to gather my thoughts, and that's when I started digging even deeper, researching the things she said, trying to poke holes in her stories, and looking into her phone's data. I knew I couldn't just confront her blindly with half-truths. I needed hard evidence if I was going to do this right. One evening, I got a call from a friend at the base. Turns out, the security footage from that night had been reviewed because of some disturbance in the neighborhood. It was standard procedure, but what I didn't expect was to find out that the footage showed her sneaking out of the house with him, her, looking around nervously, and then getting into his car. They left together that night, no doubt heading to some motel or wherever they'd been meeting. It was the final nail in the coffin. I couldn't deny it anymore. She was cheating on me with my commanding officer's son, and somehow that made everything worse. The fact that the chain of command was compromised across generations, it was almost like a sick tradition or some twisted secret family thing that went back for years. I didn't sleep a wink that night. I replayed everything, her lies, her sneers, the way she'd pretend to be innocent. I kept thinking about how she'd sit there, lying to my face, spinning stories about her stress or work friends. That bitch had been playing me for months. When I finally saw the footage, my stomach twisted again, but this time with a bitter sense of clarity. She'd been with him, probably since that party a few weeks back, when she claimed she was just catching up with her friends. I still remember her smirk that night, the way she looked at me like I was a fool. My mind raced, trying to figure out my next move. I knew I couldn't just storm into her and accuse her again, not without proof. But I also knew I couldn't stay silent. I had to plan carefully. I contacted a private investigator I found online, someone recommended discreet with military experience. I told him I wanted footage, photos, anything that could prove her affair beyond a shadow of a doubt. The guy was professional, and within a couple of days I had everything I needed. The photos, the videos, she was caught red-handed. I had her in her own lie, her own betrayal, and I didn't feel even an ounce of guilt about using it as leverage. The night I decided to confront her again, I felt a strange mixture of rage and relief. I was finally clear on what I had to do. I was going to end this, once and for all. I didn't want to be that guy who stayed in a marriage riddled with secrets and lies. She'd pushed me into a corner, made me question everything I thought we had. And now I had the proof I needed to rip her apart with facts, not just feelings. Deep down, I knew I wasn't coming back from this, but I also knew I needed to make her see that I knew everything. That her lies, her manipulations, they were all over now. So I set the plan in motion. I made sure I had everything ready, her texts, the footage, the photos. I waited until she went out that evening, probably to see her boyfriend again, judging by her schedule. I sat in the living room, phone in hand, ready to do the inevitable. When she came home, I didn't say a word. I just played the videos on the big screen, one after the other. Her face twisted in shock, then horror, then outright anger. She threw herself at me, trying to deny everything, but I stopped her cold. I told her I wasn't interested in her excuses anymore. I told her I knew her true nature, that I'd been blind, but I wasn't anymore, and I was done. Done with the lies, the betrayal, the fake life we'd been living. She yelled. She called me controlling, jealous, insecure. She said I was making a big deal out of nothing. But I didn't care. The damage was done, and I knew I'd never trust her again. The woman I married was gone. She was just a manipulative, lying bitch who'd thrown away everything we had for some stupid affair. I told her to pack her things and leave, and she stormed out, screaming, crying, trying to guilt-trip me, but I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I was putting myself first. I was done being the fool, done being the guy who got played. That night I sat alone in the dark, feeling a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I knew I'd lost a lot, my wife, my sense of stability, maybe even part of my dignity. But I also gained clarity. I saw who she really was, and I realized I deserved better. The betrayal had cut deep, but it also opened my eyes. What I've learned from this whole nightmare is that sometimes you have to rip the Band-Aid off, even if it hurts like hell. Because hiding behind lies only makes the pain worse in the long run. And honestly, I don't think I'll ever be the same after this. But at least now I know the truth. And that's something I can live with. The aftermath hit me harder than I expected. I knew I'd be hurting, but I didn't realize how much the emotional fallout would shake me. My house, once full of her bitchy comments and her dominant presence, suddenly felt hollow. The silence was deafening. I kept replaying the footage, the lies, her sneers, and the way she thought she could get away with it all. Part of me wanted to break down, scream, or just drink myself into oblivion. But I knew I had to keep it together for my sanity, for my dignity. Still, it wasn't easy. I told my parents, close friends, and a few colleagues at work, and their reactions varied from shock to outrage. Most couldn't believe Lisa would do something so brazen. Others said I deserved better, that I should walk away and never look back. But the truth was, I was in shock myself. I kept asking, how did I miss the signs? How did I let it go on so long? The worst part wasn't just the betrayal, it was feeling so stupid for trusting her for so many years. All those anniversaries, all those small sacrifices, and she'd been screwing around behind my back with some kid who probably thought he was a goddamn king. That made my stomach churn. I moved out of the bedroom, into the guest room, just to get some space. I needed to breathe, clear my head. Every night I'd lie there trying to connect the dots, trying to understand how someone I loved so much could turn into this stranger in such a short time. I also started seeing a therapist, something I'd never done before. Sitting across from someone who could listen without judging helped me process the rage and sadness. I realized that my feelings, anger, betrayal, heartbreak, were normal. But I also had to confront the fact that I was going to have to rebuild my life, piece by piece. During those days, I also reached out to a couple of guys from the base, guys I trusted. I needed to understand if her affair with the commanding officer's son was just a one-time thing or part of something bigger. It turned out the kid had a reputation, known as a player, a womanizer. That made me feel even more sick, knowing she'd fallen for some immature, selfish kid. It made me angry all over again. I wanted to confront the kid, but I knew better. That might not get me anywhere productive, and honestly, I didn't want to stoop to that level. I just wanted her gone out of my life and wanted to focus on my healing. I also started sorting through what I wanted next. Was I going to try saving the marriage? Honestly, after what I saw, I didn't think so. Trust is shattered and I didn't see how we could rebuild it after that kind of betrayal. But I wasn't rushing into anything. I gave myself time to think, to feel. Every day felt like a roller coaster, anger one moment, sadness the next. I questioned myself, wondered if I was being too harsh, if I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew I'd been too good for this. I deserved someone who didn't lie, someone who respected me enough to be honest. One thing I did realize, though, was that her bitchy attitude, her manipulations, her constant lying, they all masked a really selfish, immature woman. She thought she could keep her little affair hidden forever, but she failed. And I was the one left cleaning up the mess. It's funny in a way how betrayal exposes everything. It strips away the mask and reveals what people are really like. She was never the person I thought she was. Either way, I decided I wouldn't chase after her or try to make her see reason. That chapter was closed. I was going to focus on me now. The most painful part, seeing her try to come back, begging for forgiveness, crying about how she made a mistake, how she'd change. I told her she'd already made her choice, that I wasn't interested in being some fool who forgave a woman who'd cheated on him with a kid who was probably just using her. I was done with her lies. I realized I'd let her walk all over me for too long, and now I was finally waking up. It hurt like hell, but I knew I had to move forward, even if it meant starting over. Every part of me wanted to lash out, to break her down the way she'd broken me, but I knew that wasn't the answer. The real victory was walking away, with my head held high, knowing I saw through her bullshit. So I spent the next few weeks stripping down everything, selling the house, getting rid of her stuff, making sure I wasn't haunted by reminders of the life I thought we had. I knew I'd be rebuilding. And I didn't know what that looked like yet. Maybe alone for a while, or maybe with someone who actually deserved my trust. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let her betrayal define me. She made her choice, and I was choosing to move on, even if it felt like I was losing a part of myself in the process. That's what betrayal does. It breaks you, but it also teaches you what you're really made of. And I guess I'm still figuring that part out. It's funny how life just keeps throwing punches when you think you've finally caught your breath. After she left, I threw myself into work and therapy, trying to patch up the broken parts of me. Still, every so often, memories would surface, those little moments I'd buried deep down. The way she'd act when she thought I wasn't looking, the lies she'd spin so effortlessly, her bitchy smirk when she thought she was getting away with something. Some days I'd wake up furious, others just numb. It felt like I was stuck in this strange limbo and I hated it. But slowly, through all that chaos, I started realizing something. I deserved better. I didn't sign up for a life where I had to look over my shoulder, wondering if my wife was sneaking around again. The truth had set me free in a way, free from the lies, the betrayal, the deception. Still, I carried this heavy weight of disappointment. I thought I knew her, thought she was my partner, my confidant. Turns out, she was just an illusion I'd been clinging to. That realization stung worse than anything. One day, I decided I needed to do something drastic to reclaim my sense of control. I reached out to some old friends, people I trusted, and we went out for drinks. They knew what I was going through and reminded me of my worth. That night, I started thinking about what I really wanted from life now. Was I just going to sit around feeling sorry for myself, or was I going to pick up the pieces and rebuild? I told myself I'd start small, focus on my own happiness for once. I got into a new routine, more gym, more hobbies, reconnecting with old passions I'd neglected over the years. It was during this time that I also started dating casually. Nothing serious, just enough to remind me that I was still desirable, still capable of loving and being loved. It was a strange feeling, opening up again after all the betrayal, but it helped me see that life goes on. I met some decent women, shared a few laughs, and gradually started feeling like myself again. Still, a part of me held back, too many scars, too many doubts. Could I really trust someone again? Would I ever be able to look at a woman the same way? Meanwhile, I kept my eyes open for any signs that Lisa might come back, begging for forgiveness or trying to manipulate her way back into my life. I knew her type. She'd be back, crying and pretending to be the victim, trying to guilt me into taking her back. But I wasn't falling for it this time. I'd learned my lesson the hard way. I knew I had to stand firm, stick to my boundaries, and protect myself from her toxic ways. I wasn't interested in being some pawn in her twisted game anymore. One thing I realized is that her betrayal was about more than just infidelity. It was about her complete disrespect for everything we built, that she thought she could have her cake and eat it too with no consequences, that she could lie, cheat, and manipulate and I'd just roll over. Well, I didn't. I finally saw her true colors. That bitter taste of betrayal turned into a drive to do better, to be stronger. I started focusing on my career, my health, my future. I was tired of living in the shadow of her lies. And honestly, I think I've grown a lot from this. I'm no longer the naive guy who thought marriage was about perfect harmony and trust. I've learned that sometimes you have to cut off what's toxic to save yourself. It's painful, yes, but it's necessary. I also learned to listen to my gut. You know, that instinct that tells you something's wrong before your mind catches up. I wish I could say I've completely healed, but I know deep down I'll carry this scar forever. The betrayal changed me, but it also freed me from a relationship that was hollow. Looking back, I see this experience as a brutal lesson in self-respect. I should have seen the red flags earlier, should have trusted my instincts more, but I was blinded by love. Now I realize that love isn't enough if it's built on lies. It's about honesty, respect, and mutual loyalty. If those aren't there, nothing lasts. I'm still figuring out what's next, but I'm confident I'll get there. I might be single for now, but I'm finally in control of my life again, and that's worth more than all the fake smiles and hollow promises I ever got from her. Now, I look back at everything and realize how much this whole ordeal has taught me. It's been a brutal, painful ride, but I've come out of it with a clearer sense of who I am and what I deserve. I used to think marriage was about loyalty and trust, but I've learned that you can't take that for granted. Sometimes, people show you who they really are, and it's up to you whether you accept it or walk away. I chose to walk away, and honestly, I think it was the best decision I ever made. I won't lie, there are days I still feel the sting. The betrayal, the way she lied, the way she thought she could get away with everything, those wounds don't heal overnight. But I've learned to accept that some scars just stay with you. They remind you of what you've been through and make you stronger in the end. I've started focusing on myself again, rebuilding my life from the ground up. I've realized that I don't need someone like her in my corner to feel whole. I can find happiness on my own, or with someone who actually respects and values me. Most importantly, I've come to understand that betrayal is the end of the world. It's a painful, ugly chapter, sure, but it's also an opportunity for growth. I've become more cautious, more aware of my worth, and more selective about who I let into my life. The experience has made me appreciate the simple things: trust, honesty, genuine connection, more than I ever did before. I've also learned that revenge isn't the answer. I never wanted to stoop to her level or hurt her back. My victory has been walking away with dignity intact, knowing I didn't let her destroy me. So here I am, a little older, a little wiser, a lot more cautious. I still believe in love, but now I know how to protect myself from falling into the same trap again. I don't regret what happened. It shaped me into someone who knows what he wants and what he won't tolerate. I hope she's happy with her choices, but I won't waste another second dwelling on her. I've got my life ahead of me, and I'm finally ready to live it on my own terms. To anyone out there going through something similar, trust your instincts. Don't ignore the red flags and don't make excuses for someone's lies. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. Because in the end, the only person you can truly count on is yourself. And if you learn anything from my story, let it be this. Sometimes, the biggest act of strength is choosing to walk away, even when you feel like everything's falling apart. Because that's when you find out how resilient you really are.